So, hello again. This is Pops. And today, this is the night before Thanksgiving. I'm getting ready to get my turkey out and get it ready. But I thought I'd read a story. This is by a man named William Steig. He's the man who wrote the story about Shrek. And this is a book about, he was a really old man. He was born a long time ago, almost 100 years ago, and this is about when he was young, and it's about the world that he grew up in, and he calls this book When Everybody Wore a Hat. So, let's see. How's that? Wait a minute. That's not a hat. That's a baseball cap. Now that is a hat. Anyway, let's take a look. When Everybody Wore a Hat by William Steig. In 1916, that's a long time ago, that's almost 100 years ago, when I was 8 years old, there were almost no electric lights, no cars or telephones, definitely no TV. Even fire engines were pulled by horses. Kids went to libraries to get books, and there were lots of immigrants. That's people from other countries. This is me, William Steig, climbing a tree in the Bronx, where I spent most of my childhood. Here we go. Mom and Pop came to America from the old country. This is my family at the supper table. I was the second youngest. Wonder which one he is. That's Pop. That's Mom. That's the youngest. So maybe that's Bill. And we all lived in a small apartment. So small it was impossible to be alone. Sometimes Mom and Pop quarreled. They spoke 4 different languages, German and Polish and Yiddish and English. They spoke Polish a lot. Who knows what they were saying? It doesn't look happy. But we learned the important words. And when there wasn't enough heat, Pop even fought with the radiator. Oh look, see that? That is what people used to get their heat from in the winter. It had hot water that go through and it get real warm. Or maybe steam. You should ask your Pop. He's an engineer. And so my father and mother went to the opera pretty often. There's Pop. He's listening to something. What is that? Caruso was Pop's favorite singer, and he would listen to records on something called a phonograph. And you had to wind it up with a handle. You should ask your dad to explain records and phonographs too. Pop loved to play chess. See, the game chess with Mr. Hoffman. He said that Mr. Hoffman was the most intelligent man he had ever met. Now this is Mom's best friend. In those days, women wore corsets. That's the thing that pinches their belly together under the dress. And heels, funny shoes with tall heels on them, and hats. Sometimes the hats had fruit on them. There was no such thing as a hatless human being. Cops wore hats, criminals wore hats, even monkeys wore hats. Do you know what a cop is? That's what people in the Bronx call policemen. There were times when sad news would come from the old country. It made us scared when we saw Mama cry. Pop was an expert rower. See him rowing the boat? Oh, look, there's a man walking the dog. Maybe that's me with Bear. Probably not. That's a long time ago. Mom said Esther Haberman had a big mouth. For a nickel, you could get a lot of stuff. Hot dogs from a stand, a pound of fruit for a nickel, a movie for a nickel, and 2 movies if you sat in the same seat. A movie was even called a Nicolette. A nickel was real money. On your birthday, you might get a nickel. We moved a lot. The moving men were very strong. We used to go shopping with Mom all the time. We went along to carry stuff. This is Barney the butcher. The butcher is a man who cuts up meat and sells it. And you used to have to go to a special store to get your meat instead of the grocery store. And rich people from Europe, they wore different clothes and different kinds of hats. Remember what I said about hats? Everyone wore a hat. Even though it was on the other side of the world, we all knew there was a big war going on in Europe. It was called World War I. Prince was the janitor's dog. Kids were scared of Prince. This lady lived in a corner building. She had lots of cats. Mrs. Klingman always had a dog. Whoa, look, there's Mrs. Klingman, and there's her dog. That was unusual. She used to pass through our neighborhood all the time, but she was too elegant to live there. She was looked on by the women with admiration. We never went to a doctor's office or a hospital. Our doctor's name was Dr. Wager, and he came to our house. I wasn't afraid of the doctor, but my brothers were. Dr. Wager had to visit my brother Henry a few times. Once, he had the Spanish flu. I got my first haircut at Ditchick Barber Shop, which was across the street from my building on Brook Avenue. I got to listen to all kinds of stories. When I was a kid, everyone wanted his picture on a horse. To be sitting on a horse like a cowboy was really something. Cameras were big back then, and you had to stay very still. This was hard for the horse. In 1916, when everybody wore a hat, I was 8 years old. When I grew up, I wanted to be an artist or a seaman. And this is a picture of me today, without a hat. I did become an artist, but not a seaman. The End by Will Stieg. When everybody wore hats. And here I am, not with a hat. And here I am with an old smashed up hat. Nana hates this hat, but she's not here. Bye-bye.